Today, our guest is Dien Yuen. She is the founder and CEO of Daylight. Daylight is a learning platform which trains and certifies people who are interested to get philanthropic certification. Today, Dien will share with us her journey from Saigon to the USA and how she pivoted from being a lawyer to eventually the philanthropic space. Dien, welcome to Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation with you. We met and the chemistry between us and the great conversations that we've been having, it's really wonderful. Could you please start off by introducing yourself?
Sure. Dien Yuen, I'm the CEO of Daylight, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes. And a little bit about your family. You talk a lot about your son.
Yes, I have a teenager. He just started in ninth grade, and has already asked me about driving, so it's just quite interesting. I was born in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. I left in 78 and ended up in a refugee camp for about 10 months, 9 to 10 months, in Malaysia, Bidong Island. And ended up here in the US. I grew up in Michigan and Ohio, went to law school, and then during the dot-com days, I moved to the Bay Area for food.
I'm sure it was not the basic food, right?
Oh no, no, there was not a lot of good Vietnamese or Chinese food in Michigan.
Oh,
In fact,
exactly.
I think that was the interesting kind of piece as refugees growing up in Michigan, and mom and dad not having a degree in the US and being able to work here. Dad looked around and there was not a whole lot of Chinese restaurants. There was just one. And so with 6 kids in the family, it was free labor. So of course we had to have a Chinese restaurant. So I grew up on food.
Okay, I got that. Thank you for sharing. Those are wonderful memories of childhood, and I'm sure our
Mhm.
listeners would like to hear that backstory about you as well. I started this podcast in 2021, and it was about getting people to think about two essential mindsets for the VUCA world. First one was the entrepreneurial mindset. And in terms of the entrepreneurial mindset, there are three things. One is you're being resourceful. And resourceful means that you are able to identify the right problem because you and I know if we have defined the problem correctly, then it's half solved. And then the second part of it is actually about taking risk and managing uncertainty. And the last bit is about actually creating value, both monetary and non-monetary for yourself as well as for others. Oh, thank you. Who's that?
Oval.
Oh,
So sorry.
I think it's the first time I've had a cat, a pet on the show, so that's really great.
He loves Zoom. He thinks that people are talking to him.
I wanted to talk about your own entrepreneurial journey, setting up Daylight, and what challenges and setbacks in that journey.
Having grown up as an immigrant, being very resourceful, of course, and then my parents having to start a Chinese restaurant, right? Because we had 6 kids. It's great to be able to take care. It was free labor, but it was also great because it helped put all of us through college. Dad being dad, he would not hire an accountant. And so I did the books, right? And so we learned instantly when we were children to be entrepreneurial. How do we do marketing? How do we bring in business and customers into the restaurant? So I think that has always been on my mind is, it's good to work for other people, but there's something very special about owning your own business and be able to kind of just be in charge of your own destiny. As I was growing up in all my career, I've always had jobs that were creative for me or jobs that I created myself, even in the bigger institutions. And one time, my first job, I had to build my own desk. It was still in a box. So I think this entrepreneurial mindset has been kind of ingrained in me through my family and their experiences. And there's something I think very special about if you have the ability to build your own business, there is this opportunity for wealth generation, especially next generation. And as immigrants, we had to start all over. So for me, working for somebody to me was steady paycheck, but it didn't help build our family wealth. And so that got me into thinking, and of course, also seeing all this opportunity as well in the philanthropic advising space. We decided to start Daylight, mostly to address what we saw were kind of problems and just kind of missing opportunities.
Right.
But it's been also very difficult because the philanthropic advising space is relatively new. And so even though we're building our training programs, we also have to help develop the whole marketplace in itself. So training really our kind of purchaser customer learners that this is a need out there, and here is how we're addressing it, and this is why you should purchase our training products or services so that you could build your own business as well and help grow that. And then also working on the purchasers really of philanthropic advice are the philanthropists and donors and givers as well. And making sure that the visibility is there, that there are philanthropy advisors that exist, because many donors still don't know that philanthropy advising is a thing. It's people that you can hire. So we also have to train them that you can actually hire someone. Here's the skill sets and here's the value add for your work. I would say all of my career and paths have taken me to Daylight, and all the skills I've acquired in the past is making building the Daylight platform much easier.
Hmm. And thank you so much for sharing with us that journey that you have taken to becoming an entrepreneur with Daylight, a platform for people to learn about philanthropy and impact, also to educate donors. There are advisors who are available to make it easier for them. I wanted to spend some time to talk about philanthropy and impact because it's also new in Singapore and in Vietnam, that's newer. How did you start in that space? You've been a banker, you were educated in law. And so, how did you make that transition?
I was in the refugee camp. When you were standing on the beach and looking out, there is a boat and it had the Red Cross, or in Malaysia, the Red Crescent, right, on the boat. They did amazing branding because that is ingrained, I think, in a lot of our heads. And when I came to the US, it was the nonprofits, the Salvation Armies, the Goodwills, the community action agencies, the teachers and the principals who really helped us transition our life here in the US. And so there's always been this piece in the back of my mind that we can't do this alone. We need help. And then when I went to law school, I was a public defender, worked there for about 6 months. My grandmother ended up with cancer. And this is a little bit pre-internet age, and where you have to go somewhere to get information. And so I went to the American Cancer Society at that time to try and get some information. I just came from court, so I was in my suit, and they thought I was there for an interview. They were looking for a plan giving director. And again, that plan giving business is relatively new in the US at the time. But the concept is there are a lot of trusts and wills, and a lot of people want to name a nonprofit to receive a portion of that legacy when they pass. Having that legal background training really helped with the conversations with a lot of our donors. And so I took the position and literally had to build my desk. And even my boss at that time, the person I reported to, said, I don't really know what this job is and I can't help you. I was just told to fill this position. So you have to figure this out yourself. That actually took me down this road of understanding charitable trusts, family foundations, right? And just how do people give? Some people, if they have cash or assets, they can give in their lifetime. But for some, they need it right now and they want to pass it on to the children. But so they could name maybe a nonprofit, a charity upon their passing, accepting that maybe the charity is also kind of recognized as one of their kids, right? And so that took me through this journey. This is also during the dot-com days. I moved to the Bay Area, worked for an organization, and then a lot of the dot-comers, folks that were executives taking the companies public, 49% of them were immigrants. They're from India, Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia. They were coming from not just Asia, but Africa and other places as well. And they live in the US. So when they're thinking about taking their company IPO or selling their company, they have to do planning, right? So the attorneys got involved. the wealth advisors and financial advisors got involved. But then they also thought about, okay, we're going to have a huge tax issue here. So they started talking about philanthropy and they brought me into those conversations. How do we help these entrepreneurs give here in the US, but also give back home where they are from? So that started my journey in learning about US and also Asia philanthropy as well.
Right. Wow, what an amazing journey. Thank you for sharing that. And you're obviously someone who is entrepreneurial. I mean, 6 months into a job and going there for something and seeing that opportunity show up as something that you wanted to contribute to, and jump in and build your own desk and career from that, right? It's amazing. But it also reminded me about something. In 2001, I was going to list my .com business in Singapore, for about $300 million. And I had started to think at that point, what would I do if I had all this wealth? Well, fast forward, I ended up not doing the listing. So I didn't get all that wealth. So I never continued to think about that until the journey took me into the space of consulting and working with family businesses. Dien, you talked about giving with conditions or without conditions, as
Yes.
well about taxation. Whether you could also share more about this whole world.
It is actually fascinating because if you work with entrepreneurs and even family businesses, right? If you start this family business and you've run this business for about 30 or 40 years of your life, and you're thinking about, okay, I've attained success. What does significance mean in my life? The other is also thinking about, you built this business. How do you transition it? How do you give somebody else control and make decisions? And can you step out of this role? So as we're thinking about even as an entrepreneur and thinking about the sale of a bit or transition of a business, we also have to help, I would say, the entrepreneur think about what is life after selling your business or transitioning it to your family members or your children. What does the next week look like when you don't really have an office to go to? And so we start talking about purpose. And we start talking about, okay, then what is my significance? What is my legacy? And now that I have free time, could I accomplish something more and give back in a different way? So when advisors start planning for this, always that tax problem, at least in the US on the transition side. When you sell a business, there's always a tax issue.
Yeah.
And so a lot of advisors, what we call charitable tax planning. So we look at what tools can we use to try and decrease the tax. Either you give it to the government or you could figure out how to give it in a different tool to the organizations that you get to choose and you get to support. And of course, entrepreneurs, we love control. We want to decide, right? And so a lot of people who are thinking about selling the business or have like a meter gift and wanting to give it away will have that journey through the tax planning. But then there is another level, what we call philanthropic planning, is besides the tax and the tools, how else would you like to live your life? And that could be working with certain vendors. It could be how you decide where to shop or what investments, right, to hold. So I think there's a much broader conversation. And entrepreneurs understand this, right? Because it's all about leverage. What else can I do? How can I leverage not just I would say, our financial capital, but we have our social capital, spiritual capital, right? We have so many other capitals that we can leverage, especially relationships in Asia. Then you take this concept one step further and you think about, as I do my planning, what is enough for my children? Is giving them $10 million enough? Is 30 million enough? But then what is too much, where they can't have their own life of flourishing and purpose? So a lot of families, our parents, have to think through this. And so this is when they start thinking about, well, maybe we could give them half, when they reach 20, and then another half when they reach 40. But then you have to ask yourself, is that truly a gift? If you put all these restrictions around it, is it a gift, right? Or is it more of a contract now you have with the family member? So I think when we do planning, we start out with philanthropy and giving, we have to get into values. And once we start talking about values, we end up with family conversations and dynamics, right? In addition to how do we also take care of our community that we love?
Right.
So it's a fascinating struggle, I would say. And it takes some time, I think, for entrepreneurs or even the family members to process all this.
Right. This conversation is critical in Vietnam because we're seeing a tsunami of successions for family businesses. And you actually articulated a very key point, which is what does the founder do post
Mm.
handing over the business, the operations of the business, as well as even looking at legacy planning? If we can't find that other thing for them to get involved in, the succession plans are going to go astray because
Yes.
they don't have anything else to do.
Yes. How much golf can you do in a week,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I would say there was a situation where we were working, got a call from the wife, and she said, please do something with my husband. It's been a week. He can't stay at home anymore. And she said, go help find him, like find purpose, give him some purpose in life. And we did. We did. We had a session with him. We sat him down. We went through a little bit of values exercise. He had created 3 startups, all cybersecurity. And then when he realized what his purpose was, which is still cybersecurity, but to protect children. He created his 4th startup, but his 4th startup was all about protection, which is very, very different. Now, not only is he using his assets, like and his like just knowledge and building this, but now he has a purpose in life. And so I think it's fascinating. I think a lot of our clients and donors know what they want to do, but they need advisors like us in a way to kind of give them and expose them to other things, but also give them courage to do it.
As you were talking, I was reflecting again. I shared that I'd stopped looking in the space of philanthropy for myself, right? Like I was having this wealth to give away, and what did I want to do? One of the things that I got introduced to in your program was the giving circle to contribute and make a difference.
Yes, and the giving circles are not the way we formalized it in the West. We do this in many other cultures, even in Vietnam. Families take care of each other. They pull money together,
Right.
right? And it could be pulling money together to buy a business, to buy a house, to support somebody on their wedding, right? Or there's a new baby. So the concept of pulling money together to support each other is as old as time. But we took that concept and moved it one step further and said, okay, can we bring a group of people together? Maybe strangers, maybe family members and friends, but can we bring some people together to learn how to give? So they would try and figure out which organizations and issues to support, how much to support, but really hands-on experience of philanthropy and giving in itself. And it could be anywhere between $10, it could be 100,000 to even $1 million. The group decides. I think that's the beautiful part is we decide as a group. There's a one person, one vote concept, and it's not about the money that makes things unequal, right? Everybody is on equal footing and we're learning together. But giving circles can take many, many different forms. Some of them are very formal, very large. Others are more, let's just go and have dinner once a month, right? And we'll pull some money together and let's figure out how we can give it away or what we want to support. And it doesn't always have to be supporting formal NGOs. It could be just pulling some money together and say, we found this entrepreneur. He or she is amazing. Let's just put some money and support their work. Or it's an artist. But the idea is we all are very generous people, but let's also bring others together and have some fun while we're at it. Because we are social animals as well. So we want to be around with other people. Let's make it joyful. So that's the concept of a giving circle. But again, formalized in the Western sense, but again, people banding together to support each other as old as time happens like all the time in Vietnam.
Yeah, that's true. In Singapore, my mother used to participate in kitty parties where
Yes.
women would meet once a month and they would put in a certain amount and then someone will get it within that 12 months. So it was like forced savings.
And I think that's the beautiful part about when we talk about philanthropy, it doesn't always have to be so formal. It doesn't need to be a charitable trust or a family foundation or a donor advised fund. We talk about the six T's. We teach the six T's, right?
Yes.
A lot of people know the three T's. We give our time, we volunteer for organizations. We give our treasure, we financially contribute.
Yes.
And we also talk about testimony,
Ah,
right? I if I love this organization and I tell you about it, why I love this organization, I ask you to support it. I'm giving testimony
right.
of the organization. And then we also talk about ties, right? How do we bring together our social networks as well to support an organization? And I would say time, talent, treasure, ties, testimony, and now we also have truth. Brings it together. How do we want to live our life? Are we honest with ourselves
Mm,
in how we approach and in the decisions we make? And that, again, it's not all about financial, right? It's
yeah.
not always about the money. There's the definition of wealth. I actually learned a couple of weeks ago. Wealth is actually the definition of well-being. That's how it's defined. It's
Right.
not financial capital, it's well-being and how each of us can flourish. It's only meant, I would say that in our couple of lifetimes, how it suddenly became financial, wealth
Right.
management, wealth industry,
Right.
right? But it's really how do we have that well-being, that self-well-being, and also how do we take care of others around us?
Right.
I think words are very important. Unfortunately, we take words and we try to capitalize it, right, on it and make it a financial piece of it. But in working on families, I know, especially when we talk about values, very few times does wealth come, like financial, come into that conversation as a value. It's
Right.
always about integrity, hope, right?
Contribution, aspiration.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
Mhm.
right.
And when we think about legacy as well, there's, everybody wants to be remembered, right?
Right.
I think in the Asian culture, that's why we burn incense, our ancestors,
Yeah.
we want to be remembered. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs and families struggle with that. People, in a way, if you have a lot of wealth, do you want to be remembered as being a very rich gentleman or a rich woman? That doesn't really give you, I would say, that lasting value, right? That legacy. Being remembered as rich is not as important when you think about being remembered as a father, as a mother, right? As a teacher. So I think this conversation is very unfortunate. Somehow we don't communicate and we don't talk about this enough,
Right.
and especially in Asian culture, right? So we need more folks who understand how to help families, right? Have the courage to have these conversations.
Right. Okay, wow. Thank you so much for decoding philanthropy and impact and even wealth, right? What wealth means. And I'm really glad that the narrative is shifting from wealth as just a financial measure to actually that whole sense of well-being and flourishing in life. So I'd
Mhm.
like to move on to the second mindset, and that's about a crisis-ready mindset. A crisis is a setback or a failure, and usually in a crisis, you can die or live because of the actions that you took or you didn't take. And some of us can freeze or fight or flee. But what I wanted to do was to engage with you on how you built your inner resilience and the support structure, the coping mechanism, the daily practice. So please share through a journey of a crisis that you had.
I should start by saying I am number three of six children.
Yes. Ah,
So
number
I
three
am
of six.
constantly trying to get attention is always on the older or the younger one, right? The middle one say, eh.
Yeah.
So I think that has actually made me a little bit more resilient of being very independent as well. And it doesn't help. I was born in the year of the ox, so I'm very, very stubborn.
Oh.
And I'm an Aries as well, right? So I'm a Ram. You put all this together. I think what was interesting, I always say, thinking back about my career and my life. In 2018, I was working at a wealth management firm. I was a philanthropy advisor. And it was very exciting at that time because people were talking about philanthropy. So the wealth management industry was really interested in the space. And I was at the right place at the right time. and I received the CAP, which is the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy. So I was the first CAP, first certified philanthropy advisor in Asia. The college who manages the CAP program called and said, would you like and come and teach in the program? I'm not a professor, never been trained as a professor. But it was really interesting opportunity. So I said yes. And also because, I didn't have to travel. I could stay home and work. And I'm a single mom, and my son at that time was in fourth grade, and really hard having to do pickups and drop-offs for school. So it was a great opportunity for me. I took the position. I was still beginning to learn how to teach. And then when COVID came, everybody was like on Zoom. And I was at that moment, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna lose my job because everyone was like worried what they were going to do. And I can't go back into wealth management, right? It's really difficult to jump back in. And so I thought, okay, what am I good at? Having grown up on Skype, right? If you remember those Skype days, I know technology. I know how to use Skype well. And so I trained the whole academic faculty how to use Zoom. Luckily for me, the adoption rate was really high and they actually grew.
Mm.
Right? I still believe in, yes, there is a lot of chaos and things might be falling apart. But I think looking at opportunities where what am I good at and what's missing? I constantly asking what is missing, and is there an opportunity? Is there a market opportunity? But I think that all goes back to the story I was telling you about dad opening up a Chinese restaurant, right? Yeah, he saw an opportunity. He had 6 kids who could give the free labor and do the work. And just being that resilient, like keep at it. And then he didn't want to be in the restaurant business, but it was good enough to pay 6 kids to college, right? So I think when I built Daylight, I think of 2 things. One is, cannot do this alone. We need people, we need friends and families to help us. So that's why when Daylight was kind of being built, it was immediately, who do we want to bring in to the team?
A couple of things stood out for me. One of that was that you are a firm believer in support structure, whether it's family, friends, you bring them on board. The second piece that also came out for me was your attitude, which is let's try it. What's missing? Let's keep at it. Because you can have a lot of opportunities, but if you don't have that inner can-do attitude, you're not going to implement it.
Yeah, but that also comes from the entrepreneur spirit of the Vietnamese people as well. My mom always said to me, like, if you're gonna marry somebody who has a business, even if it's a vendor stall in the corner, right? And she always said to me when I'm ever down and about work or anything, she always says, you have 2 hands. What are you worried about? So I think that has been ingrained in a lot of the culture in itself, right? It's simple, it's very, very simple things, but you're like, why not? Why can't I do that?
Yes, yes. I totally agree with you. Vietnamese people are the most entrepreneurial in the world. This is something that I saw from as early as 2008 when I came and started working here. But the attitude is special to you, right? Because you can be entrepreneurial and you can have loads of idea, but can you see it through? And that's a different characteristic. So I know you didn't want it to be special. I'm sure your clients love the fact that it's always a let's try, let's get it done.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Okay, let's move to the next topic. I want to talk about spirituality. Where are you in your spiritual journeys?
Like most Asians, we practice, but we don't really understand what we're practicing. Is it just traditions? And you ask mom and dad, well, why do we do this? And say, oh, because we just do, and grandma did it, and so we should do it. Right. So there's been, I would say, at least in my Chinese Vietnamese culture growing up, there's always a question of why, but it never gets answered. Like, why do we pray during this day? Why do we go to the temple during this time? And then I would say, it had never really occurred to me to really think about that, but to accept the tradition as it is. It wasn't only till I had my son. I think there's something very special about being a mom. When you become a mom, you do have to think about this other person you have to take care of. And that started me on this journey of thinking, well, how do I console my son if I'm not here? Right.
Mm.
So it was very practical, like, Chinese, Vietnamese, we're very, very practical, right? It wasn't about me trying to find spirituality or looking for it, but it was more like, what do I do if I'm not here to take care of my son? How does my son learn to move on? And so I was more worried about his kind of faith in this work. Um, but it took me down this road. I started learning all about the different religions and came back to Buddhism. And then I realized a lot of the culture and the practices we've had growing up didn't really have a word to it. But there was this faith, I think, that we believe that there is something good, there is a next life. And then especially the idea of material things, right? Not as important. And then when I started accepting this, I also learned from a master every single morning I have to spend 10 minutes at least just quieting myself, which takes up, being an entrepreneur, it's hard to do
Right.
because your mind is constantly racing. But that 10 minutes every day when I started practicing that really helped. It got rid of the anxiety of what do I do with my son, or what does my son do when he's without me? So I think I'm still at that stage trying to figure this out. And being, I was an entrepreneur, unfortunately, it gets too busy and we forget to take care of ourselves. And I'm horrible at that. I don't spend enough time taking care of myself. But I do rely on my aunt. My aunt calls me all the time. She's a practicing Buddhist, and she's constantly calling, "What did you do today? Do you want to come visit me?" And so just sitting with her always helps. So
Wow, awesome.
I still worry about my son, right?
How old is he?
He's 14.
14. I
Mhm,
got that.
mhm. Yeah, the Bay Area. Schools are very expensive here. Not all
Mm.
schools are good. So I actually decided to enroll him into a Catholic school.
Right.
And he goes to church. We learn and all the practices. But I like the concept that some of the Catholic schools um, teach citizenship and
Mm.
values.
Yes.
In the public schools here, they don't teach that, right? It's very difficult to, but he learns about values. He learns about being a good citizen. He learns about empathy,
Right.
right? And empathy is really hard to teach,
Yes.
right? And so I think even though we are not Catholic, I do like teachings from very different religious organizations and just the idea of if you can learn empathy in different ways, why not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When I work with families, helping families, had this conversation with a mom one time, and she said, I need to figure out how to teach my son empathy. How old is your son? My son is 34. That's a little bit too late. What were you doing before? You have to start at an early age. And I told her, like, he probably already has this. You just need to find a way to help him find it, bring it out, right? You
Right.
can't just say, I want to teach empathy. It is a journey. And some
Yes.
people find it through faith and spirituality. Some people find it by just observation and watching.
Correct. Correct. I want to talk about living a simple life. What's living a simple life for you?
Right now, in my entrepreneurial stage of a startup, a simple
Yeah.
life is the less dusting I have to do, the better. And my house is very, very minimal. Again, for me, possessions and material things are not important. I think through our work, my relationships and being with others are very important to me. So to me, living a simple life is having a good meal with a
Mm.
friend or a family.
Mm.
And it's not about a fancy meal. It's just the ability to sit down and have a conversation and talk and get caught up. And also the other is it's not a fancy vacation. I can be on the beach or I could be in Paris. I could be anywhere, but that doesn't bring the satisfaction. The satisfaction is being able to spend time with my son and being with my mom and being with dad or even working in the garden with my mom. So to me, that's the simple life. Things get really complicated. We can make it very complicated, but I try just to keep things as simple as possible. What can I do? What can I control?
And if you had to find three words to describe flourishing or thriving in life, what three words would those be?
First one is peace, and then the other one is just joy. Like
Yeah.
find joy in everyday things. Family is so important to me. If something, mom and dad or any of my brothers and sisters need me, no questions asked, right? We drop a weekend and just be with them.
How does sustainability show up in your life and your workplace?
Oh, that's a hard one. When I think of sustainability, the first thing I think of is just my team. I work them hard. We are in a startup, and so we're constantly thinking it's hard for us to take a whole week off as a
Yeah.
team. It's very difficult. And so we just think about stamina. How do we sustain ourselves in this line
Right.
of work? And because we are so passionate about this work, we don't know how to stop. I think that's the problem for us. So I think just constantly doing regular checks, even when we have to put a calendar reminder, like got to get a coffee break or got to get up. It's hard if you don't have good health. It's hard to do other things.
Yeah,
And you don't think about this until something major happens into your life. And then you realize health is so important. So I think without health, it's hard to be sustainable in your own daily life, right?
that's true. Oh, great. Thank you. And I've got some fun questions for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to overthink it. Just say what comes to mind. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
Years ago, when I was in middle school, I read the book called The Power of One. It's about this Australian who became a boxer. It was a very thick book, but I like that book.
That's really great. And your favorite travel destination? You travel a fair bit.
I do. But I love being in Vietnam. I love being in Singapore, and I would say most memorable is probably Myanmar.
Ah,
So back in 2000 and I think 2007, 2008, Cyclone Nargis
right.
came about, and we raised a lot of money. I was working at Give to Asia at that time, raised a lot of money to support the cyclone, and the folks that were involved in it, and it was amazing because it was the first time Myanmar opened its doors, right, to the international community, and to be able to go, I went a year afterwards, just to check in on the projects and just see how things were going. To be able to see, I would say things that haven't been open in a while firsthand was deeply moving to me, especially with all the temples and just there's something very, very spiritual, I think, about with Myanmar.
Yes.
Um, and I did a lot of projects in Myanmar, raised a lot of money to do extra projects there, especially with social entrepreneurship and really try and build the NGO
Mhm.
sector. So watching what has happened, it's actually very painful for me. It
Yeah.
hurts, right? But in remembering the best times have always been just traveling to Myanmar, not because of the sightseeing, but meeting the people and understanding what can we contribute and what can we do, right? And what do they want us to help them with, not what we want to do with them. So
Wow. We probably would have been in Myanmar at the same time because we started our consulting work there in 2016. And I was also doing my doctorate. So I did my research thesis on a Myanmarese family business. And it was a great opportunity to be there to actually watch that whole unfolding.
yeah, very special memories and just very special people.
That's true. So if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be?
Oh, anybody in the world. I would say my great grandfather. Um,
Hmm.
He was the one that left China and moved the family down to Vietnam and ended up in Saigon at the time. And he started a business. Our family was in the black wrought iron gates, the design
Yeah.
the gates. Yeah, so he started a business and actually built gates and windows and all that for a lot of families in Vietnam.
And if there could be any superpower that you could have, what would it be?
Oh, I think just to learn how to rest and be at peace. I don't know how to stop my mind. I think if I could figure out how to do that, then my life would be a little bit simpler. I think that my problem is I see something and I want to go fix it. I don't know if it's the middle child syndrome in us,
Possibly.
but yeah, you see something and you're like, oh, I can fix that. I can do that. So being able to pace yourself is really
Right.
hard.
What's the best advice that you've ever received?
Oh, this is a good one. So this is a gentleman who actually worked for Steve Jobs. And he was really good to me. I meet with him once a year. And I asked him, how were you able to manage all these very successful folks working at Apple at the time? And how do you get projects up, right? And out the door? Like basically, how do you do the work in itself? And he said to me, every quarter, three big things. Don't think of 20 things on your list to do, right?
Mm.
Just think about three things that you want to accomplish. And if you get those three things done, then you did well. And that again has helped me at least build daylight. So every quarter we think about what are the three big things we want to accomplish. And we get those, then everything falls in place,
That's right.
right? Best advice ever. Very simple,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
But it's also great for time management.
That's right. And what's the worst advice?
Oh, the worst advice. Raise money from venture capitalists. I realize in our business it's very difficult if you raise the values are not aligned, right? Not
Yes.
because of the personal values, but the business model values are different. And so we did not when we thought of DLA, we were offered actually a few VCs came and wanted to support our work, but and being a woman of color in the US, right, and starting a business to have venture capitalists come to you and say we want to support you, that's amazing.
Yes.
Right. But we said no
Great.
because we don't want to be beholden to anybody.
Yeah.
We want to build a business and well, we call ourselves an impact business, right? So yes, we do want to make money, but we also want to be very conscious of how we run our business and the impact that we can create. So we make decisions based on what we would like to do, not because we're beholden to a shareholder or venture capitalist.
Very nice. Very inspiring. That's a lesson I learned myself personally,
Mhm.
because when I look back now at that journey that I took to listing the company, the push came really from the fact that I had raised millions of dollars and the investors wanted an exit. If I was to look back at that whole journey again, we didn't need the money. We wouldn't have been rushed to exit, and I wouldn't have had to make those decisions. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we live and learn. But this is something which people still haven't learned, which is start a business that you can sustain yourself
Yeah.
and have the joy of building it from scratch.
It may also have to do with how old we are as well. Because I think when we're younger, we're like, oh, yeah, let's build quick and fast. And as we get older, maybe with the life experiences that we've had, we can make a little bit better choices. Again, it goes back to this attitude. Again, being an entrepreneur, we just don't want to be beholden to anybody, right, to tell us what to do because we don't want to wake up the next day and our property's gone and we end up in a new country. So how can we more or less, I don't want to say control our destiny, but as much as we can.
That's true. That's true. Well, we've come to the end of our interview, and it's been so interesting getting to know you, Dien.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you for having me. I would say this has been an amazing conversation because you've asked me questions that very few others have asked. I appreciate that.
I'm glad because we want people to get to know you from different perspectives as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.